tuned in. Now, gender-based violence has been a devastating and widespread impact in the region, generating serious consequences for the health as well as the well-being of women and girls. However, it is crucial to highlight that violence against women and girls can be prevented and its negative effects can be mitigated. Gender-based violence disproportionately harms women and girls because of their lesser socio-economic, political power in relation to men and the discrimination they do suffer to enter the labor market. To accelerate the activism against gender-based violence, we are engaging with Sheirat Namayanja, who's a youth country coordinator, joining us with the Sexual and Reproductive Health Rights Alliance Uganda, as well as Loretta Owino, programs manager with voluntary services overseas, to discuss this as we come to the climax of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Good morning to you, ladies.
Good morning.
I'll start with my immediate left for better introduction. Good morning to you, Sheirat.
Good morning, Priscilla. My name is Namanja Shirat. I am the Youth Country Coordinator at SRHR Alliance, and I have been doing advocacy for young women and girls for a very long time, I would say. And I'm happy to be here and have this discussion with you.
Okay, all right. What caused you to actually focus on this particular line of work?
Well, being a young woman who has been brought up in a society where most women are told they only amount to marriage, they only amount to giving birth, and that is anything and everything that they can do for themselves, I have tried so hard to push beyond that bar from the community I was raised in. Even it is a community where by the time you turn 16, if you don't have a child, that is an accomplishment. And therefore, to me, it's just more than a young woman being the forefront of anything. It is more than the surface. It is how much can you do for yourself? How much do you amount to by yourself? Do you see yourself providing a future for yourself where you give everything you want to yourself, but you're also able to prove people wrong who tell you amount to nothing?
Okay. Loretta, good morning to you once again, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you as well for having me. My name is Loretta Owino Okeng, and I work with voluntary services overseas. I'm a program manager. I manage the health program, but my passion is in women's rights and gender-based violence. Just like Shirat, I've been doing this for a while. It's something that I'm very passionate about. We know of very many existing situations, particularly in Uganda, where gender-based violence is quite prevalent, it's high. Actually, Uganda is identified as one of the countries where, as a woman or a girl existing or living in Uganda, is harmful to you as for your existence. So we see that there's a percentage of about 56%, which is quite high, of gender-based violence that exists in the country. Of women being harmed in several ways, in physical ways, in sexual ways, in mental ways, emotional ways, some knowing, some unknowing, because we think that it is normal that as a woman that you should be experiencing this, and we've seen it with our grandmothers, we've seen it with our mothers, and we've come to accept gender-based violence as something that is normal. But it's a high statistic to carry as a country that all these women are being violated in various ways, and this is normally between the age of the reproductive age, 15 to 49, is when it's very high, and that links it to the sexual gender-based violence aspect, because then they're the age group that's considered to be productive or reproductive or sexually active.
So what is so special about that age bracket, 16 to 49, that leaves out the lesser ones and the ones that are 50 plus? Yeah,
what's special is that, just like I've said, this is the age where, first of all, for 15, you just, in the case of Uganda, that's the entry age for sexual activity. So you'll find the girl is becoming a girl. Men are starting to see the physical puberty is coming out, the physical aspects are coming out, and men are attracted, this is for the sexual gender-based violence part, are attracted to a young girl without knowing the age. Also, that age group is also in the rural areas where you find the prevalence is higher. You'll find there are many issues that cause this, the early marriages, lack of poverty leading to early marriages, child marriages are again linked to poverty. That age group, you'll find parents eager to give their children or daughters to be taken on as young wives. But also 15 to 49 is the age where they're reproductive. the hormones are there and they're eager, they're not eager, but they're able to produce. And this is, in a way, I think it's not just, we're not blaming the men in this case, but we are in a way, because they're the main perpetrators, and they're the ones who normally take advantage of young girls. But it's cause, I think it's cause of, there's so many aspects that cause it. It's sometimes it's education level, sometimes it's poverty, sometimes it's just who you are that causes it. We can't really put an aspect to why there is a high rate of GBV amongst this against such age categories, but it is high, and I think something needs to be done about it. All right. Yeah.
Let's look at the prevalence and the impact of that when it comes to physical, emotional, as well as the psychological well-being of, for example, survivors.
Okay. Well, the impact of sexual and gender-based violence, or gender-based violence in general, is just, it's about, it takes a toll on survivors. We don't call them victims, we call them survivors. You'll find it affects them to the point of, it leads to issues like depression. You'll find a young girl or a woman or anyone who's been violated falling into depression. You'll find harm, physical harm, people becoming disabled because of physical abuse, where people have been beaten or cut, ears have been cut, arms have been cut, limbs have been cut. We find even nutrition can be put in there. Poor nutrition, psychological imbalance, failure to be in a relationship that is healthy as a woman, as a young girl who's becoming a woman, because you've been violated sexually. There's a fear that it brings onto you as a person, that you cannot interact with others easily. There's so many issues that it brings about, and it kind of disables someone, not physically, but sometimes even emotionally and mentally, in how they would interact with the community. They tend to withhold back. We've seen also rates of suicide coming up just because of sexual violence. So when we talk about gender-based violence, it's not something to take lightly. It's something that creates a very negative impact onto the society, and we hope that as a community would work together to tackle these issues.
Okay, let's look at the younger community, Shaita, in terms of sexually gender-based violence. In your perspective, what are the immediate causes of such?
I would say the very first one is poverty. We look at it from a perspective where a lot of young women and girls lack the specifications to get higher paying jobs, but also at a time they are discriminated from getting those jobs, because of course sex comes first when people look at you. They'll say you were female. Oh, those are highly emotional people, they cannot handle such a job. They are weak, they cannot handle such a job, and that puts them at a pedestal where they would want to see themselves earning more than they earn typically, but then they are not. And therefore, them being in a relationship where a husband is generally earning more than them, or just a spouse, general spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, they can violate them in any way because I'm providing for you. What more can you do? You earn less than I do. You probably earn 100,000 a month, and he earns like 1 million. So that puts you in an uneven kind of relationship where he's the provider, he's the caretaker, and you're just there as nothing. And I feel like also not being informed is one of those issues that has really put a great number of young women and girls in jeopardy, because we do not have this information typically. I would say if I really wasn't in this space, I don't think I would know half as much as I do right now, and probably I would be in danger of experiencing such. But it's not to say women that have this information are not being violated as well. And it is not that it's their problem. No, it is because that is how society views most of these aspects, and it is okay for it to happen. If your husband loves you, he has to beat you. Such kinds of tendency or mindsets that we have been raised up listening to or following just put us really in a vulnerable state where we do not know what to do, but rather just move with it. And one key important aspect as well that I think puts women down is education. We have a high number of young women and girls dropping out of school, typically not just because of teenage pregnancies. It could be the discrimination they're facing at school because they're girls. It could be the harassment they face because they're ages where the harassment starts from. It could not be 15 where you're at the peak of puberty. It could be like around 12, 13, where a teacher looks at you and they just feel like, yeah, that is...
You have this uncle who over visits
exactly.
over hugging you.
They hypersexualize you, and at a certain point think most girls just feel that is too much. It would be better off if I just dropped out, did something different, and a little bit of money here and there. But then at the same time, they're exposing themselves to all of this harm that they cannot fight by themselves. And see, if maybe they had gone through with their education, reached somewhere, had a little bit of backup here and there, maybe it wouldn't have happened, or it would have been a much lesser advantage or disadvantage to them.
Okay. All right, Loretta, we want to explore the existing international as well as local or national legal frameworks that are currently addressing sexually gender-based violence.
Okay. You know, gender-based violence has been, they've been fighting the fight for a while.
Yeah.
We see international bodies like the UN having systems in place from 1948, laws that say everyone is equal, everyone should be treated equally, no one should be harmed because of their sexuality, etc. We have CEDAW, which is a tool, or I would like to use a hard term. Anyway, there's CEDAW, but it's an instrument that has existed since the 70s as well, and it's 79, and it's something that is there to protect women. You see so many laws that are there, but that's at the international level. We need to go more local. When we look at the local level, what does Uganda say about gender-based violence or sexual violence, and what does it do in case of a perpetrator and the victim are in entanglement, for lack of a better word? We have laws like the 2007 Uganda gender policy, where the government ensured that gender equality should be mainstreamed in all sectors. So when you're doing in the workplace, for example, employment, we should not talk about, we should not hear stories about sexual harassment because I'm trying to get a job and I'm a woman and I'm not getting it because I'm a woman. However, I might be even more qualified than the man. So the government has put such policies like the gender policy to make sure this happens. But there's also the penal code, Article 123, that has existed. We've always used the penal code from, it's a British thing, it came to us. But Article 123 of the penal code, Chapter 120, looks at a punishment for rape, which is something that is good, because if they acknowledge that rape is a crime, then we are glad that the government says then a perpetrator should be held accountable for violating a girl. Then we look at the Domestic Violence Act. This is for intimate partnerships, and we know that this is one of the main causes of violence in our societies. As she said, we see women thinking that I'm not loved if my husband is not beating me. But then there's a Domestic Violence Act that was put forward in 2010, where they say you have a right to report if someone is violating you, and the perpetrator would be held accountable for violating you. And when we talk about violations, we're not just talking about beating, we're talking about someone economically violating you, withholding things from you, saying, I'm not going to give you money because you're that dependent on them, and you know you can't survive without them. So there's emotional violence. There's verbal violence, where they use words to degrade you, to put you down, to make you feel worthless. But we also have the child protection, which is more for children, but it also covers the age group, because you're not a child until you're 18. So it makes sure that anyone who violates a child in terms of incest, rape, or when you have a child, what's the term of when you have sex with a child before they are of age? Defilement, or defilement. Also in line with that, then you're held accountable, and there's certain precautions that are put in place that we're supposed to use, especially the child protection department of the police is somewhere that we can use or rely on for response to such cases. So we see that there's several systems that have been put in place, and they seem to be working. However, they need to be strengthened, because for us to tackle the prevalence or the rate that is abnormally high, I think more needs to be done, or we need to leverage more and work further in advocacy for the existing laws, for the communities to know that they have options. They have a place to go in case of a violation, or they have someone to talk to. So there's a response, referral, prevention pathway for them to be able to survive.
Okay, Sherita, let's discuss the role of human rights actually in combating gender-based violence, especially focusing on sexuality and how it can be used to help survivors get justice.
So first and foremost, I think your human rights are supposed to protect you, regardless of who you are, regardless of your background, regardless of your education, or where you grew up from, or your job. And this is something that we at times tend to think cuts across for only a few people. Now, for example, people with disabilities, a lot of their human rights are violated because, well, you are using a wheelchair, so for here we'll have to carry you, without even asking for consent on whether or not it's okay for them to be carried through something. It is going as far as when a person with disability is defiled or raped, it is just to help them, according to society. No, I had someone say, no, for us, when it comes to sex, if someone rapes you in community, they say you've been helped. No one would have had sex with you willingly, so you've been helped. And that is a step closer. And this is something that we are denying for young people and young women at large, because then if I do not have the right to do this and that for myself, but rather people are telling me this is what is meant to happen for me, then it's not working generally. So to me, when it comes to human rights, they are meant to protect you, but they're also meant to help you seek justice. If the perpetrator is not being put behind bars, the justice is not being carried forward, you still have the right to follow up through with this case, get the help you might need, use the lawyers because you have access to them, even if you do not have the money. There are people that do this work for free, and they are there meant to help you achieve your human rights through fighting for your case and making sure that you get the justice you deserve.
All right. Well, thank you so much, ladies. We do have the instruments in place, but it's very important that we have this information. So civic education towards this is very paramount for society to be able to stand up for themselves against gender-based violence. That brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you for having been with us.